All right, and we're live. Hello, Pennsylvania DECA. Thank you very much for joining us on tonight's competition prep Google Hangout. The topic for tonight is presenting yourself in front of a DECA judge. So for many of our new DECA members, that might be something that's kind of scary. You might have just recently dealt with that at your district competition, getting in front of a judge for the first time. Might be something that you're preparing for states as well, which is coming up in just a couple of months. So tonight we have a great group of panelists here to tell you their experiences of competing in front of judges, not just in DECA, but in life as well, because it's something that you're going to do all throughout your life. So I'll introduce our group of panelists. Of course, if you don't know, my name is Donald LeCompte. I'm the state president from Pennsylvania DECA. We have Joshua Nolf with us. He's our state vice president. We have Jerry DiGiovanni. He's our state executive director from Pennsylvania DECA. We have Kyle Kuo, who was last year's Western Region vice president. And we have Tyler McBee, who is this year's Southern Region Vice President. So this is definitely one of the best group of panelists we've had so far this year. We're excited that you can join us, and we hope you take a lot out of this. So Josh, I'm going to pass this along to you.
Hi, everyone. As Donald said, my name is Joshua Nolf. I'm the State Vice President, and I'll be helping Donald co-host this live Google Hangout. One thing, as a brief introduction to the topic, when we're looking at presenting ourselves in front of the judge, your judge or your judges, we want to recognize that how to be professional and how to take away the most from the experience and make sure that we know that we're practicing these situations in DECA for our future experiences in life when we're interviewing for job positions or anything down the road that we may have to interview for. While we're in DECA, we want to make sure that we use these times as practice. And obviously we have the competitive nature and we want to do the best in our competition, but there's a lot of ways that we can learn and grow from these every time we step in front of a judge. And so to talk more about it first, we have Kyle Kuo, last year's Western Region Vice President.
Thanks, Josh. So typically, when I talk to freshman members, as well as really any members who kind of ask for competition advice, my first piece of advice is to definitely, when you get in front of a judge, to be different, be entertaining, and be very much an individual. What I mean by that is the judge will sit there for hours upon hours on end listening to typically the same 8 or 9 ideas be bounced around and trying to be sold to them different ways. So when you're going into your role play, really try to think of something that you think is unique, something that hasn't been seen or used before. It may be something that the judge hasn't heard that day, and it's going to be something that will stick out in their mind. So when they're doing score sheets, they'll think about your role play in particular. Typically, that kind of helps you get a higher score at the end of the role play, as well as be very personal, very communicative with your judge, understanding that most of them, and typically they aren't supposed to talk to you, but kind of pass it along as you're trying to have a conversation with this person and they're having a conversation with you. The more personal you make it, the more in tune they are to listening and understanding. Otherwise, if you sound robotic, if you kind of have a pitch and you sound like a salesman, sometimes that'll turn the judge off and they'll stop listening to your idea. So really try to key in as to what your judge is liking, what your judge kind of shows interest to or doesn't show interest to, and really just try to play off the energy that you have with what your judge is giving back to you.
All right, and Kyle, I'm just going to ask you to expand a little bit. I know you have a background in the hospitality industry, so I was wondering if you could talk about going into these presentations with like a hospitality mindset. I know I've done hotel lodging management in the past, and the motto is always the customer is always right. So just kind of going into these with personal demeanor, that sort of thing. If you could just expand on that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I found that worked the best for me, my style of presenting to a judge and with working with people is, as I said before, really treating them as another person. You're not just some random person off the street who's going to try to sell this one thing to get a score. You're really involved with the whole situation. This was your idea. This is, if you want to say, it was your baby. So treat it as such and really try to convey that off to the judge as, I really care about what I'm talking to you about. It's not just the score that I'm going to get on the piece of paper at the end of the day. It really is, this is my idea. I want to take ownership. of the whole situation, not just your idea, and really try to get you engaged with what I want to kind of happen with the whole situation.
Those are great tips, Kyle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Jerry DiGiovanni. He is our State Executive Director of Pennsylvania. And I know Jerry's going to offer a lot of tips for people who are adults and looking. I know Jerry's held interviews before, and he's been a part of DECA for a long time. So he'll be able to give us both sides of the operation when it comes to judges and interviewers. So take it away, Jerry.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Some tips that I always give to students, and I give these same tips to our state winners, are going on to ICDC, and we've had a number of national winners in the last couple of years, and a lot of them use these tips. I'll break it up into 3 areas: introduction, presenting your case, and a closing. In the introduction, a couple of things that you want to remember is to make sure you're introducing yourself right away, and the title, whatever the role play says your title should be, use that in the introduction. Say the name of the judge out loud, because name gives you power. So if you don't see the judge's name on their name tag, feel free to ask the judge and call them by Mr. or Miss. Thank them in advance for their time. A lot of these judges come from far away, take a time off, oftentimes unpaid time off from their jobs to assist us. So thank them for their time. Couple things now, getting into the case itself. If you're allotted, say, 10 minutes for the presentation, you want to make sure you use all the time. So if you're excited about your topic, you can talk forever. The people that tend to leave after a minute or 2 obviously didn't have enough time to cover all the performance indicators. So the people that spend the most time on their presentations typically get the higher scores. I always like to use flashcards. Maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were able to bring laptop computers into the team decision-making events. And some of them you still are, but if you're not able to in your event, kind of use the paper that they give you as kind of like a presentation board. Don't put a lot of information on it. I use maybe 3 or 4 bullet points, use 3 or 4 words, but hold it up as you're presenting. And another tip I use is, in addition to remembering to cover the performance indicators, I kind of use 1 page for each performance indicator, write the performance indicator on top, maybe 1 or 2 bullet points about that performance indicator, and then place the paper down and pull the next paper up for the next performance indicator. When you're finished with your presentation, you can leave all the pages in order by personal performance indicator, rather, with the judge. And now when the judge goes to review your score and give you your score, if they forget, if you covered a certain performance indicator, if they have all these sheets of paper in front of you, now they are pretty sure that you covered it and you'll get the highest score. So performance indicators, make sure you're covering them. Use marketing terms to the best you can. Cover how the internet today has affected the industry that you're talking about, and be sure to cover current industry trends in whatever topic area or competitive event you're competing in. For example, if you're in the hospitality event, know the occupancy rate of a hotel, what their target is. Know if you're in sports and entertainment, know some of the big arenas around the country, and those kind of things. Just Google it. And lastly, in closing, ask the judge what questions they might have. One thing I always do suggest people do is ask for a follow-up meeting with that judge, because you can say, hey, I know we didn't have a lot of time to cover everything today, but how about we get together in, say, 30 days to go over some of our findings and our discussions today. And lastly, of course, another fun tip is you can make a business card with your name and number, email address on it, and put it down for the judge to take with them, and that gives you some extra points too. Thank the judge again, use their name, and a big smile, a lot of enthusiasm will go a long way. So that's all I have for tonight.
Hey, thank you for that, Jerry. Just a quick question for you. Whenever you're planning for uh, your competition, you get that allotted time to read the role play, come up with a solution, make your PowerPoint. How much of that time did you allot to focusing on how you're going to present yourself from the judge?
You mean so just say if you have you have 10 minutes to present, I'm going to talk about performance indicators for five minutes of that, 50% of the time.
Yeah.
Do a 30-second intro, 30-second closing, and then maybe talk about the case and your industry itself in the other three minutes or so. But as you know, the rating sheets specifically cover the performance indicators. Sometimes there are 60, 70 points of your total score. So I would make sure I'm at least spending half of my time talking about some of those performance indicators.
All right, thank you very much, Jerry. Those are some great tips. We will close it out here. We have Tyler McPhee, our Southern Region Vice President. I know he has some great tips to share as well. So if you wouldn't mind, Tyler, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Donald. Just to start off with, my junior year of high school, also my first year as a DECA member, competed in hotel and lodging management. And so here are just three best practices, things that I've gathered from that time, from that experience competing, and just speaking with judges since I first competed my junior year and to this point now. So the first one is experience. So a lot of times students go into a role play or a certain cluster and they're very focused on the role play specifically, the case study, the scenario, especially the practice ones. They may practice 4 to 5 case studies, which is great, but whenever they get a scenario that's different or that has a different concept to it, a lot of times they get very frazzled and very nervous. So one thing that I saw that really benefited me was just immersing myself in the industry that my role play was in, without getting too specific. So like I said, I competed in hotel and lodging management. So as funny as it sounds, I watched a TV show on the Travel Channel called Hotel Impossible. And so I may not have used specific principles and skills from that show in my role play, but what it allowed me to do is see an overall picture of what the hotel and lodging management industry is. Because before that time, before I learned about DECA, my only contact with the hotel and lodging industry was staying in a hotel. And so immersing yourselves, whether it's reading business articles regarding your cluster, watching videos about what goes on in your industry, anything like that may not give you specific talking points when you go into your role play, but it will allow you to give and to gain an overall concept and idea of exactly what the industry is, and it will be able to help you add to the conversation with your judge. Because when you go into that role play, you're no longer a student in a high school in Texas. You are the position in which that role play said you are. So whether it's lingo, whether it's conversation, whether it's talking points that you gather from that industry, all very important things that can add, and again, like Kyle said, is going to set you apart from the 40 or 50 students that judge has already heard from. A lot of times in role plays, the name of the game is not trying to come up with a new idea, it's coming up with a new way to present that idea, so that when your judge is filling out that score sheet, they remember you, and they know who to give that score to, and who to send on to the next level. And so the first one is experience, and the second one is elasticity. Now what that means is, as a role play, as a competitor, you should be able to bounce back whatever your judge throws at you. Again, my first year in hotel and lodging management, quite understandably, there were some questions my judge had for me at the end that I just wasn't able to answer. I didn't either have the time or the ability to answer the question. But what I did do is I tried to set up a follow-up meeting to answer their question at a later date. A lot of times students will just not be able to answer the question and just respond in a sense of that. And so again, that's just one of the things that's going to set you apart with the judge, because it's not every day that someone wants to set up a follow-up meeting with you if you're not able to answer a question. A lot of times we see not having that knowledge or not being able to answer a question as a negative, but turning that into a positive, turning that into a future goal for you definitely helps the judge. helps them remember you, and helps them kind of give you a sense that you don't have all the answers, but you are interested in finding those answers. Because really, the judge is looking for someone who isn't just concerned about the role play itself, but they're concerned about the big picture, the big scope. So that is the second point, is elasticity. And then the third is just energy. Now, a lot of times we hear about being excited and being able to relay that to the judge, and that is so crucial when you're in a role play for 10 minutes. Making an impact is so important on your judge, especially when you have, again, 40 or 50 other students whom they've already heard from, they've already heard the same idea, and now they're just looking for something a little bit more. Again, hotel and lodging management, my junior year, had a case study about keeping the floors in a hotel lobby dry. Now, for someone like Kyle, who worked in the hospitality industry, that may get him really excited. But for me, as a junior in high school, that wasn't my passion. That wasn't my heart at the time. But what I was able to do is really relay that to a personal sense. So it no longer was about a wet floor from a water fountain in the hotel lobby. It then became about what that safety concern can cause for the hotel. So again, it ties into the bigger picture and is going to allow connection to be made with the scenario, with the problem, with the judge. Because you have to think, the judge is a person too. The judge is human. So they're going to have some of the same experiences, some of the same concerns that you do. And so tying that case study, tying that scenario with the judge and creating a conversation, creating a big picture context is really helpful. So energy. Again, that's what's going to leave your judge wishing they could have more time to hear from you. Again, it's not about a new idea or innovative idea all the time. That is part of it. That is very important. But most of the time, it's about your delivery of it and trying to make sure that the idea that you are presenting is very innovative in the way to present it to the judge, that they can remember it even after you step away.
Thank you, Tyler, for that. A question for you would be, I really like your topic of having energy whenever you're talking with your judge, but what if you walk up to your judge and you can tell that he has more of like a mellow tone to him, more of a reserved gentleman or lady? Should you change your energy and your enthusiasm about your topic to go with the judge, with how the judge is portraying himself?
That's a great question, and it is inevitable that you're going to be in front of a judge one day for one scenario that may be very worn out from the 40 or 50 role plays he just heard, or may just not have the excitement on his face that you do. Personally, I would definitely not change my emotions for that scenario because, again, a lot of times the judges will have a certain demeanor about themselves just to kind of see how you react, how you perform in an environment that isn't comfortable. Again, the role play in of itself is about the scenario at hand, but also, again, looking at the bigger picture, it's about how you perform under a stressed environment. A lot of times in our everyday life, we're not constricted to 10 minutes of talk at a time, and we're not trying to solve problems or present a problem with a complete stranger. But that's the case in a role play. So I would definitely encourage someone, if they approach a judge and they're not excited, to get them excited, to get them pumped up. And even if at the end of the day they don't become excited, at least they see the passion and the smile on your face, because that's really infectious. It's hard to sit and look at someone who is excited, who is pumped up, and to forget about them. It's something about that demeanor that really helps remember people. So I would definitely encourage to go in full force, be passionate, be excited. If the judge smiles at the end, awesome. If he or she doesn't, that's okay too. It's important to remember that as long as you completed your goal and what you were supposed to do in the role play, that's all you can do. So.
Thank you very much, Tyler. At this point, I just have a few other questions to kind of wrap things up that I'll ask everyone as a group. So if you want to just jump in and answer, that would be great. No real order here. My first one is, you talk about going into a role play or a presentation for the first time. something that could be very nerve-wracking. I'd love if you could talk about maybe an experience you've had of going into a presentation or maybe just going into an interview in general where you're nervous. You're no way of getting around it. You're nervous for it. And then what kinds of things can you do to help calm yourself down, to stay relaxed as you enter that presentation?
So my freshman year, at district conference, I had never done a role play before, and my chapter had never done practice role plays prior to that. So I was on the bus on the way to district conference, trying to talk to our chapter president, trying to get an idea of what it would be like. And he gave me the very brief description of, you're going to get a problem, you're going to have 10 minutes to solve the problem, and then you're going to tell someone about it. And I said, okay, awesome. And basically, what I did was I read the instructions back and front, and tried to really figure out what this was all about. And I presented my problem to the judge, and the whole while I was just trying to really understand how the whole process worked, so that when I went to states or I went to ICDC, at that time I'd be able to prepare myself beforehand. I had a better understanding of what the whole situation was and how I was supposed to deal with it just by talking to the judge and pitching my ideas of what I had. Although they were poor, the reactions I got from the judge really helped me understand, okay, that's not what I wanted to do, but this idea that I had was a better idea. So by preparing yourself to go into those competitions and things like that, really just being able to think on your feet firsthand, and then getting down to, okay, this is how the role play works. That's how I was thrown into it. So obviously not the best case scenario, but really use district conference and state conference early on in your DECA competitive career to really gauge, this is how this works. So now next time when I go into it, it's going to work better next time.
So I would just add, just practice, practice, practice as much as you can with as many different people as you can find. Your parents, your friends, your teachers, anyone that will give you 5 minutes, and take tips from each of them.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Just to touch on what Mr. Giovanni said, definitely for sure, the most important thing that you can do whenever practicing for role play, like you said, is get a wide variety of people. One of the mistakes that I made my first year is practicing a role play with one specific person. And because of that one specific person, although she was a great listener, great person to get feedback from, the feedback was all the same every time. So I would definitely encourage, if you get a wide range of people that you can speak to for 5 minutes, you're going to get a wide range of feedback. Maybe something that stood out to that one person that maybe the person before didn't catch. Because what you want to do is you want to catch and correct all the inadequacies, if you will, all the things that you can improve on before you get to the district competition.
I definitely say that to utilize your advisor as well. Your advisor most likely has been doing DECA for a while and has been a part of it and surrounded with it, and they'll be able to help you and give you honest critiques. And then also I utilize my parents as well, for sure, whenever I want to practice for my competitions, because both of my parents judge at my district conference, and they've been around DECA since I've been involved and since my brother was involved. And so getting people that will give you 110% honest feedback is something that's so important, because you don't want someone to lie to you and say that you've done a good job if you haven't. You want someone to be able to give you honest critiques that won't tear you down but will help build you up and be able to have you move on to that next level and that next tier of excellence when it comes to competing and presenting yourself in front of the judge.
Thank you all. Now I have a question directed just towards Jerry here. A lot of students go in and they see the judge as being someone, I don't know, they can't be wrong. The judge absolutely knows everything that they're talking about, and they've been doing this forever. Can judges get nervous too? Is that something that can happen? Can it be a two-way street?
Absolutely, especially sometimes we have first-time judges or a judge that's never judged this particular area before. They are often as nervous as the students. The key is don't let it show. So the students rarely, if ever, think that the judge is brand new or inexperienced at all in any area. So as the student competing, kind of portray the same thing. You can be nervous, and you might be nervous most of the time. With practice, you get less nervous, but don't let it show. Walk in there and pretend that you know it all. And if you don't know it all, simply just tell the judge, that's a great question. I'm not exactly sure the correct answer, but let me do some research about that, and I'd be glad to get back to you later on today with the right answer. Because in business, nobody knows everything at all times. We have different resources and different people we can talk to get the answer. It's not something you have to memorize. So that's a great way to get around that.
That's very important for some members to realize. They don't think they can be nervous, and the judge can be nervous. So just try to go into it with a cool, calm demeanor. That would be great. I have one other question here that anyone can tackle. Most of this presentation so far, we've talked about role plays. So I want to talk a little bit about written events, things where you have maybe months to prepare ahead of time for your presentation. Might be a little bit longer, you're not being put on the spot. What things can you do to prepare for those kinds of presentations to keep you from being nervous and to help you prepare for a great presentation?
One thing you can add with the written events as well is to just be human. When you walk into a presentation, particularly with the written events, people almost memorize everything to the T. And then sometimes from the judge, it sounds like it was memorized. And any movement or anything that would distract them, they could be thrown off completely. So feel free to say hello. How are you? What's the weather like today? If there was a big event in that city that you're in, you might want to talk about, hey, did you get a chance to catch that game? Again, what do you think of this cold weather, this warm weather? And make it a little bit more interactive. If it's a 15-minute presentation that there's no breathing space, as you transition back and forth, you may want to throw a question out to the judge to kind of break it up to make sure they're still listening. If one person is speaking for 15 minutes, it is going to sound very robotic and very, very practiced. So again, if you could just breathe, do some small talk. It's, in the real world of business, that's what people do when they take people out to lunch. They make client presentations. It's very interactive. How are you today? Is a simple way to do it. And remember that it's just like a normal conversation, and make it as smooth and non-scripted as you can.
To kind of bounce off of what Jerry had said, when I did hotel lodging professional sales, really know what you're talking about, really know your numbers and what you're trying to get off to the judge, what information you want them to have. But going off of what Jerry said, when you convey that information to them, make it sound like it's a conversation, like they are involved in this decision. For me, I had to sell a wedding venue, catering, rooms. Basically, had to sell the hotel to a possible couple wanting to get married at the location. So knowing how many square feet in the room was, how much it was, how much it costs, what it could hold, those are important figures I could have. But in having those in the back of my head, I could then stare at the judge instead of looking at my prepared materials and say, hey, I think this would be great for you, and this is why. And I could tell them, spin all these tales and give them pictures and really sell them on the space like it was my own. So what Jerry said, make it very personalized, but also when you do that, make sure that you know all the facts and figures, because being scripted has its pros. You know what you're going to say, but being personal has definitely a better factor with the judges.
Just to add one more thing, as far as written events go, if your event allows it, create materials that are going to complement what you're talking about. So it's one thing to hear, for a judge to hear from 2 presenters or 3 presenters the information, but to be able to see it laid out exactly what is being talked about, what's being discussed, just adds to the ability to be interactive and to understand and to grasp the knowledge. So just like the competitor just like you have to grasp the knowledge of the scenario, of the case study, of the event, the judge has to grasp the knowledge of what you're talking about in order to accurately score you. So anything that you can do to help the judge understand, asking questions, active listening, things of that nature, anything that you can do to help them grasp the concept, which is going to help your chances of getting a higher score and then sending you on to the next round.
Well, those were all great tips and advice from all of you, Jerry, Kyle, and Tyler. We thank you guys for being here. Is there anything else that any of you would like to add to sum things up? Well,
I'm good here.
all right. Well, we thank you all for being with us today. This has been, you guys, awesome panelists, absolutely amazing group, and we know that we have a lot of great tips that we can share that hopefully we shared with our members of Pennsylvania and across DECA as a whole. We hope that people who are watching now can come back and learn from this. These are all on YouTube that people can come and reference at any point that they want. We thank you guys once again for being here with us, and we hope that you guys have a great rest of your evening. And we'll see you guys back here our members back here next month with a new group of panelists and a new topic. Thank you guys.